she's also a he?
More. I like more.
Well, I'm bisexual, actually.
Oh.
Yeah.
I go both ways.
Hello and welcome to Bisexual Breakdown, where we have breakdowns as we break down pop culture. My name is Katie. I am one of the co-hosts, and I am here with my other co-host, Serena.
Hello.
And you have not heard from us for quite a long time. I don't actually remember when we posted our last episode. I think it might have been in the summer, I want to say sometime.
It's been a few months. Just proof of life. We're still alive.
Yeah. Which, I mean, we kind of just wanted to record what is probably going to be kind of a short episode, just like as a check-in and hey, we're still alive. I think kind of the meat of this is going to be that we both are sort of going through some negative, like mental health in our personal lives and, things
happening in the world.
Yes, things happening in the world. There's that. Like, I've got a lot of stuff going on in my personal life right now, and recording and producing basically and editing a podcast is like a hard thing to keep up, especially because we live on opposite sides of the world from each other. Do you want to talk a little bit about what's been going on with you lately, Serena?
Yeah, it's been really kind of hard to lose myself into something. Like, I'm looking for the next thing that's going to be my new hyperfixation that's going to consume me and allow me to, I don't know, lose myself for a while into a fantasy world, because the real world, let's be honest, is not that great at the moment, or it hasn't been for a while. But I can't disengage and I can't not be informed. And so it's really kind of hard to turn your reality brain off and to immerse yourself into fiction. I mean, at least I'm struggling with it. And sometimes, like, I will watch things and it mirrors things that are happening in the real world. And it's just an uncomfortable feeling that takes me out. And it's just, I can't relax and I can't enjoy myself and I can't, switch off like the reality button in my brain and just enjoy myself. So
Right.
It's been rough. I've been watching some stuff like casually, but there hasn't really been anything that it's like, utterly consumed me. What about you?
I mean, I wouldn't say that I've had like a massive hyperfixation in the last several months. Certainly not one that is media related. It's so funny. Entire thing that I've been doing for almost our entire chunk of time that we've been not recording is hyperfixating on tennis, which is like the biggest curveball this year really threw me.
So you've not been into tennis at all, like, until the last few months? Like, it's not a sport that you have watched or followed?
I don't think I had watched more than like maybe 5 minutes of a tennis match before the movie Challengers came out, which was in April, I want to say. And I watched that movie, as everyone knows, because we made a whole episode about it. And even in my personal life, not online, I have not shut up about that movie once. I own 2 Challengers t-shirts that I wear all the time. Everyone in my life is fully aware that this is a thing that has taken over my life. Kind of just got sucked into it. I was like, at first it was kind of just like, I've watched Challengers so many times. How many more times can I watch Challengers? And I was like, I could just see if I would be interested in tennis, like as a sport outside of the movie. And I got really into it. It was kind of nice timing because I just happened to decide to start watching it while in the middle of like one of the biggest tournaments in tennis, which is the Paris Masters. And
I have no idea what that is, for reference. Like, I don't follow tennis at all.
Yeah. Well, okay. I mean, I'm not going to go too far down the rabbit hole here because genuinely I've sent like hour-long voice memos to people about tennis, and we're not going to go down that rabbit hole right now. So there's four of like the biggest events in tennis that are worth the most number of points because tennis works on like a point-based system. So each individual player gets like a certain number of points depending on how well they do in a tournament, as well as money. You get a certain amount of like cash prize money by making it a certain way through a tournament. And so there's four of kind of like the biggest ones. There's the Australian Open that I believe happens in like January or something. And then it's the Paris one, which happens, I want to say, when was that? I think it was at the beginning of June, kind of. And then the third one is Wimbledon, which is later in the summer, more like in July.
Okay,
And
I know what
then,
that is.
yeah, Wimbledon, I think, is probably the most well known one. And then there's also the US Open, which is in September. So those are kind of like the big four. Those ones are worth the most prize money. Those ones are worth the most points in like the world of tennis. And yeah, I just happened to start watching during the Paris one, which is also quite a big deal. And I kind of just got really obsessed with it, and I haven't necessarily become unobsessed with it. Still pretty like heavy in it, and I still watch a lot of tennis, and I find it very entertaining. Specifically, I will say like women's tennis is so much better than men's tennis. I don't care what anybody says.
Why
I
is that?
I'm gay. I, I
There
mean,
it is.
there you go. Oops, I said it. Well, I mean, okay, that's only part of it. I think I don't really know what it is. I just know that the first game I turned on was a women's tennis game, and I was just like immediately like, "Oh, I love this. This is so fun." And I was rooting for a specific player and I was really into it, but then tried watching men's tennis like frequently, and there's just no one that I found interesting enough to really like get behind.
Hmm.
And I don't know, I was just immediately taken with like the women players, and the men's players are all still kind of like, I don't know, like I do keep up with them a little bit. Like I kind of follow the rankings and I'm kind of following who's winning matches. Like obviously I would like keep track of who's doing well in like a tournament on the men's side.
Hmm.
But I can't say that I really like sit down and watch a lot of their matches. Because I'm just like, I don't know. I'm really into the women tennis players.
I mean, aside from like it's very attractive, athletic people,
Mm,
what is
yeah.
it about the sport that is entertaining for you, or exciting, or just captivating?
I'm not sure. It's really interesting. I had heard about this and they talked a lot about it on like the interviews and stuff when I was obsessed with challengers. When I'm still obsessed with challengers. But when I was watching all of the interviews and stuff, they talked about how it's like a very psychologically challenging game because you're really out there by yourself. And like the stakes feel so high every single match, I will say,
Hmm.
because you're watching a tournament, and the way that the tournaments work, every tournament you play, and as soon as you lose a game, you're out.
Hmm.
So you're not playing multiple people in a tournament to see who gets like the most wins the most number of games or whatever, anything like that. Like you're playing a match, and if you lose that match, you're done. And so it's like a real like high stakes game, and I kind of feel like most of the other major sports that certainly I've been exposed to, which as a Canadian is like mostly hockey, where they're playing just like game after game after game for the full season, and like they are getting points and stuff that count towards something, but it doesn't really ever seem to like mean anything until when they're working up to like the Stanley Cup.
Uh-huh.
But and it just feels so different. Like in tennis, you're just like you're in a tournament and you're really like fighting for your life to like stay into the tournament. yeah, the like athleticism and just like the mental fortitude that takes. And there's so many emotions, and like you can see on like the players' faces when they get really like frustrated, or sometimes the way that they react to something is like you can tell that they're really upset with themselves, with like how they've been playing. They're not happy, or they're really happy and they're showing like all this like positive emotion. It's just like a really emotional game to watch.
And is there any of the, like when we were watching Challengers, it's, dramatized and it's made probably more exciting than real life is, but like, is there any of that rivalry and personal drama between the players?
Oh yeah, I think so. I think that it'd be hard not to have that, because that's the other thing. Like they basically like you're kind of in small spaces with these people. Like everyone who's playing these tournaments are going from tournament to tournament. So you're seeing a lot of the same people over and over again, and you're probably kind of almost forced into spending time with these people. And so yeah, there's definitely like, there's drama. There was actually quite a bit of drama around the Olympics this year in tennis. Some of the US tennis players were really like mouthing off about some of the other players. It was really crazy. Well, actually, I was about to say not on the court. That's not fully true. Some of it was on the court. There was this one situation where this one player, her name is Iga Świątek. She's from Poland, and she is currently, I think, the number 2 ranked player in the world for the women. And yeah, the American that she was playing against kind of like hurt herself. And so Iga went to apologize or like see if she was okay. And then the American player accused her of being like fake, or she was like, you don't have to pretend to care about me. And it was
Oof.
like really like crazy. It was just like, yeah. And that was only one of like a few incidents that happened at that, at the Olympics. So there's a definitely big emotions, and it's also like that on the men's side. Like there's some real, like I said, I don't follow it as closely, so I don't really, whatever, but there's definitely drama on the men's side too. Like there's some real intense characters, and like I said, there's just like there's a lot of room for like big emotions, and it definitely they spill out sometimes. There can be arguing. I've seen a lot of arguments with the I almost called it an umpire. That's not what they're called, is it?
A
The
referee?
yeah, the like line judge person. Yeah, ref kind of. That's like their role. I've seen a lot of people argue with them, and like there's been like name calling and swearing, and
Mhm.
so yeah, that stuff actually does happen in real life.
That's fun. So, other than that, what else have you been up to?
I don't know. I feel it's just been kind of a blur of busy. If we're gonna start getting into the more like honest stuff that we've been struggling with, my dad has been really sick. He has cancer for the 3rd time.
Oof.
He had lymphoma, which is white blood
Mhm.
cell, like white blood cancer, basically, which he, went through chemo for and was supposedly fine from. But then the year after, he got brain cancer. And we were told he wasn't going to survive that, but he did. And he, once again, like went through chemo and went through some radiation and went through like an extremely lengthy and difficult remission period where we weren't really sure how much of his like cognitive functions would return,
Mhm.
but they did, and he was good for a very long time.
Wow.
But then last year, kind of, actually a little earlier than this time last year, it was more like September into October, he kind of was starting to feel, I don't know, like little things were starting to go wrong. And so, he started having to go in for appointments and stuff to get checked out. And yeah, so his cancer came back. And
I'm so
he,
sorry to hear that.
and it was, this time it was prostate cancer, and it was affecting his kidneys. And so he had to go through this whole thing with like dialysis for his kidneys. And uh, And then we weren't really sure how like aggressive this cancer was, but it's fairly aggressive. I'm not going to go too deep into like all of the details about it, but yeah, it's pretty aggressive this time, and I don't know, it's just been really tough.
Yeah.
Kind of like what you said, it's like tough to find joy in
Yeah.
things, like for the reasons you said as well, which is just that like basically feels like we're living on like a burning shithole of like a planet,
Yeah.
basically. And yeah, on top of that, it's just like, oh, yeah,
That's rough.
that's my big like. This is why I haven't had the like energy or time to put towards, yeah. And it feels like it's definitely ramped up because I mean, obviously, this was all going on when we were recording before, but
Mhm.
feels like it's kind of like just like ramped up a little bit lately.
Yeah.
Um,
How are
yeah.
you, I mean, how are you coping with that? Are you able to talk about that with like the rest of your family?
I do have a therapist.
Mhm.
Shout out to my therapist who I see semi frequently. I think that that's one of the bigger things because I'm not really one of those people who like wants to talk about that with like friends and family necessarily.
Mhm.
I think that must be a family trait because as a family, we all seem to not really want to talk about it with each other. I don't know if that's like a good coping strategy. I don't know if my therapist thinks that because every time we talk, she sort of low key hints that maybe I should try to talk about it with my family.
Yeah. My family is not a talk about our feelings kind of family either. So,
Yeah. Honestly, I don't know what I would say to them. I mean, we all know kind of like what the situation is, and it's I will say again, thank God for therapists because she is really the one who is sort of mentally getting me through this, I think.
mhm.
She really helps me remember to try to like do things for myself, which is like a big thing because especially this week has been especially kind of busy. It can be difficult to try to remember to be like, oh, I still need to like do this or I need to do that. I need to make sure I have time to do some things that can be stress reducing or that are just fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's really important, but also really hard. No matter what it is that you're going through, like it's really important to try to find moments in your day where you seek joy in like whatever form that is for you and however simple ways you can manage
Hmm.
at the time. And that's something I'm trying to do. It's hard.
It is
Like
hard.
my brain is just screaming at me all the time. Yeah, and just kind of trying to control feeling overwhelmed and feeling kind of hopeless about, everything that's happening around us. Like I personally, I'm okay. I can't complain about my life, but it's been hard in the last, how many years has it been? A little over 3 years. I have moved across 2 countries, 3 apartments, and it just feels like I'm undergoing like this constant change. Like I don't feel settled anywhere, and I'm always kind of anticipating a problem
Hmm.
that I have to solve, and like I can't just seem to, relax. But I'm hoping that's going to change soon. So I'm applying for my citizenship in the country where I currently reside. And so, once I get my passport, that gives me a little bit of security as the world is, becoming increasingly intolerant towards immigrants, it feels a little bit uneasy. Like I'm trying to build a life here, but at any moment, policies, laws can change, and it just upends everything that you've been working towards.
Hmm.
For the record, I don't live in the United States, thank God, but
Yeah. Yeah.
that's a bit of a problem everywhere. It's
Yeah.
worse in some places, obviously, though.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I mean, I also don't live in the US, which I don't mean this to be in a flippant or rude way to people who do, but like genuinely thank God that we don't, because my dad is getting free healthcare right now. You know,
Yeah.
like he gets chemo for free, he gets hospital stays for free, all of that stuff. And like if we lived in the US, we would have like racked up thousands and thousands of dollars
Yeah.
in medical bills that we don't have to pay because we live in a country that has at least a level of socialized medicine. Not everything here is free, but we're not getting charged thousands of dollars for, you know, hospital stays, like I said, or chemo or radiation or dialysis when he had to get dialysis on his kidneys. All of that was free from the government. So when I think about what our situation would be like if we lived in a country where we had to pay for all of that,
Mm-hmm.
it like makes me sick to my stomach.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's the reality for like literally hundreds of millions of people. Like, you're one illness away from like being
mhm.
completely ruined. And it's so unfathomable.
Yeah. And that is like a big thing that I think about a lot lately,
Hmm.
especially we don't have to talk about him, but we all know what's happening in the US right now.
Yeah.
And I just think about that a lot and all of these people in the US who already don't have it good. Like if we're being honest, things
Yeah.
already aren't great for a lot of people in the US, and it's going to get probably worse for those people. It's not something can even comprehend, like,
Yeah.
that, what that must feel like.
Yeah. It's bad for everyone unless you're super privileged, like a billionaire. I mean, I understand that like for everyone it's varying degrees of bad, but like if you're cis and you're white, you're probably going to fare okay compared to BIPOC people, indigenous people,
Mhm.
trans people, queer people. It's scary for them.
It's really scary. And it's even worse almost because it feels like it's gonna be bad for people who think that they're safe from this. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? Like,
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of people in the US who, for whatever reason, think they're going to be immune to the policies that he's going to be putting in place. But like you just said, a lot of people are one medical accident away from being in insane debt, and that can ruin someone's life. There's probably a lot of people in the US who even maybe voted for him and not.
Not completely realizing what the implications
Yeah,
are, and then are now like, oh shit, maybe I did the wrong thing and maybe this is going to be good for
yeah,
me. People always think that they're the exception. Like I'm seeing people who are immigrants who are anti-immigration, and they think that, oh well, the bad things are going to happen to the other immigrants, not me. What makes you think that? Like what makes you think you're safe?
and that's because there's like that big myth of like the good immigrant, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And unfortunately, a lot of people have bought into that of thinking, you know, if I'm good enough, if I follow the rules enough, if I contribute to society enough, if I conform to what I think is good American values enough, I'm going to be exempt from that. And they just don't realize that no, these people hate you on the basis of the country you were born in, and
Yeah.
you being here and owning a business and whatever isn't enough for them to not hate you.
I have a lot of privilege as an immigrant. I live in Europe and I've lived in two European countries. And, like I follow all the rules and I, try really hard to contribute to society and all of those things. But I've never for one second thought that I'm safe. Like if the tide turns, that I'm going to be okay. I've never had that level of security. The country that I lived in previous to this one had a fairly recent election, and 1 out of 5 citizens voted for the party that was founded by literal Nazis. Like, they have a far right-wing majority. And like, as a brown person in a very white country, that is terrifying, even though I'm there legally and, I haven't broken any laws. Like, it's very unsettling.
Even in a situation like that, where, I mean, maybe things wouldn't get violent in the way that they maybe would in a different country, it's still just being like ostracized is
Yeah.
distressing enough. That is still not a situation that someone would want to be in. And that is the thing with the US, despite how much I hate this about that country, but things that happen there really set a precedent for what happens in the rest of the world.
Yes.
We even saw this the last time that he got elected, which is that it emboldens every single person in the world who believes in far right rhetoric. It can happen in other countries. It happens in my country. We have our own miniature Donald Trump who I don't really like saying his name. That's why I paused so long before I said it. I was like, I don't even think I want to say this idiot's name. Anyways, we have our own version of him in my country who is pushing and pushing to be elected in our next election. And I don't know if he has a chance of being elected, but when you see what happened in the US, it certainly doesn't give you a good feeling about it, I will say. So
Yeah.
it spreads to other countries, and other countries have their own far right politics and parties, and it really emboldens them and makes them feel like, oh, well, it can happen in the US, it can happen here, and it makes them louder, and it makes the people who support them louder. And
Meanwhile, the planet is burning.
yeah, we're a parasite on the planet, and the planet is like, it's time for you to leave.
Yeah.
It's time for you to get off me. Your time has come and gone.
It's so depressing. At the
Yes.
time when we need leadership to rally the world to stop a cataclysmic event that threatens the entire human race and our survival, this is the kind of people we're electing. It's just so depressing.
And there was an article that was published the first time he got elected president.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about this, and I'm not the only one because I see it on social media all the time, but I genuinely think about this maybe once a day, which is the phrase, I don't know how to convince you that you should care about other people.
Yes.
I know, I'm sure you see that all the time.
Yeah.
I think about it all the time because as complicated as all of these political and social and economic issues can be, for me, my personal politics can basically be summed up with that phrase. Everything I believe in socially, politically, economically is I don't know why I have to convince you that you should care about other people. I don't know why I should have to convince you that you may be paying an extra few cents so that a kid can get breakfast at school, or so that a teacher can have a secure job position, or so that someone's dad who's in the hospital can get free hospital care. And that doesn't bother me. That's not something that I would ever even think about trying to push back against. And I don't know how to accept that there's so many people who think that that's not a reasonable request from us as people who live on a planet with other people.
Yeah. I mean, it really blows my mind that you can be against basic human rights. You just don't see other people as people and deserving of a decent quality of life, something that you would aspire for yourself. Why wouldn't you want that? Because I move in immigrant circles and I see a lot of immigrants talking about how, they don't like it because when they emigrated, it was really hard for them. And, people who are immigrating now have a lot more support and social safety nets. And they don't like that because they didn't have that when they first became an immigrant. And so it's well, you had a bad experience and that I'm sorry for you. And that's terrible. But why wouldn't you want other people to have a better experience if that's something that's within your power to support. Because
Yeah.
you suffered, everybody else has to suffer. That doesn't make any sense to me. Like, if I can spare someone a bad experience that I had, I would want to do that.
hmm I'm thinking of like a very specific kind of like small scale example, but it's related in the sense that like that's just like a real thing that people think. I have a coworker from a really long time ago, and I was complaining once about how I think I had like witnessed someone being really rude to someone in like a restaurant, or like a server in a restaurant, or maybe someone who was serving them at like a fast food place or something like that. And I was like saying how I don't understand how anyone could possibly be rude to a server or a waiter or someone providing a service of any sort. Like that to me is just like unthinkable, because I have worked and continue to work jobs like that where I am serving the public. And she was like, well, I know what it's like to do a good job. And so that's why I'm rude to them, because I have been through it too and have had to deal with rude people. So I decide to be rude when I go out too. And I'm like, what the actual hell are you talking about? And I like kind of pushed back on that. And I was like, yeah, but because you've dealt with rude people at our job, shouldn't you be like, oh, I know what that's like and it sucks. And I should want to be nice to service staff when I go out somewhere. And
Yeah.
she was like, no, because we all have to deal with it. And I'm like, yeah, they have to deal with it
Because
anyway.
people like you exist.
Yeah. I'm like, they would have to deal with it whether or not you were rude to them, because there's other people out there who haven't had to work serving jobs and don't know what it's like. And that's why they're rude to service staff. You don't need to like dogpile on that and provide like extra. Like, I was gobsmacked for a very, I mean, to this day, I'm gobsmacked about that. I just don't understand. And that rings true of that sort of same idea, which is that like, oh, well, I work in a service industry job and I have to deal with assholes. It's like the same thing. It's like, oh, well, I had to move to this country and suffer because it was so hard to get here and set up my life. So why should I try to make it easier for someone else because I had to suffer? And it's like, well, yeah, you went through the suffering. You know what the suffering was like. Why would you not want to stop that from happening to somebody else? Like I said, it's like a fundamental difference in, I don't know what it is, like understanding of the world or like anything like that. Like, it's very bizarre to me.
So I don't really know how to transition from like this depressing topic.
Yeah, it's difficult. I do feel like we need to end this on a more positive note, because I don't really want the ending of this to be like, oh, everything sucks and is bad, which while might be true, I do feel like there's, a few glimmers of happiness still in my life.
Yeah.
So since this is mainly a media podcast, we can talk about some of the things coming up that we're excited about, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that's coming up that you're looking forward to?
Okay, so I want to start watching a fairly recent show. I think it just started a couple of months ago. I don't know how many episodes in, but it's called Dr. Odyssey. Have you heard of it?
Yes, it's on Disney, or that's where I would stream it, is on Disney.
I haven't even looked up where it's streaming, because everything I know about this show, I have learned through out of context GIFs and video clips on social media, and it's just I am intrigued. It's starring Joshua Jackson, and apparently it's a medical procedural that's happening on like a luxury cruise ship.
Oh, is that what it is?
That's what it is.
Oh, okay. I had no idea.
I had no idea up until like today. I just kept seeing these clips and I was like, what is this show? Why are people like yelling about it? Because people are talking about like this throuple at the center of this show. And I don't know if like people are just projecting or this is like actually a major storyline. And it seems like it is. Like, it's not just like people take out of context interactions of characters. It genuinely seems like this is where they're going. Like, this is a slow burn, polyamorous romance in the midst of this medical procedural, because Joshua Jackson is apparently the doctor, like the chief medical officer or whatever of this cruise ship. And the two other characters, a man and a woman, are his nurses. So they're the little medical team, and they had a threesome.
Yeah.
And they're talking about how like, oh, it was a one-time thing. But what if it wasn't? And there's a medical emergency, I think, every episode. But then as that's going on, they're also exploring this relationship in the background. At least that's what I've gathered from very disjointed things that I'm seeing. But
Right.
like, I'm intrigued enough to check it out.
Yeah. That was the one thing, because I had never heard about it before, but then people on my Twitter feed were talking about a threesome that happened on a show, and I was like, what are these people talking about? And then yeah, I looked into it, and I'm trying to think of how much to be swayed by the possibility of polyamory happening on my screen, because like I'm not a big medical drama person.
I am not a medical drama person at all. Like, it's not something that I would enjoy. I wish it was something else, but
Yeah.
like,
I was gonna say, like, I've never been like a Grey's Anatomy person or anything like that. Just never watched any of those types of shows. But damn, they're really sinking their claws in with the threesome.
yeah,
Yeah. This is 2024 is the year of the
the threesome. Ryan Murphy keeps doing this to me. I have watched at this point all 8 seasons of 911. I do not enjoy the emergencies at all. Like, it is low key traumatic for me, but I keep watching it. I keep coming back because I like the characters. Sometimes I have to fast forward to past the gory bits because like it's just really distressing for me.
Yeah.
Like, I can't deal. So I'm worried about Dr. Odyssey having really, like gory medical scenarios that I have to just power through.
Right. Yeah, I don't know, because I haven't heard anything about, like I said, until you said it 2 minutes ago, I didn't even know that it had to do with doctors. Because I see it, because I've been watching other stuff on Disney. Like, I watch Abbott Elementary. I really like that show. And it's also on Disney. So whenever I open like the Disney app, I always see the Dr. Odyssey thing there. And all I ever see is the ship. Like, it looked, I don't know. I guess the doctor is in the title. So I don't know what I thought that was referring to.
Yeah.
But I just thought it was more of like a ship-based show and not like a
Yeah.
medical-based show.
And apparently, like, the episode that just aired, or like the most recent one, has to do with, I mean, they're like a luxury cruise, but then they have themes. And so they're about to embark on this entirely gay cruise. So there's going to be a lot of queerness happening on the ship.
Ooh, I'm intrigued. I am intrigued. I've been like really bad at watching stuff lately. Like, I go to the theaters a lot and I try to watch stuff at home, but I find that I'm watching more stuff that is like things I've seen before, because I'm finding it difficult to like sit and just like watch something on my TV without doing something else.
Yeah.
Like, it's funny, I was just talking to a friend last night about how I was trying to complete this checklist of scary movies to watch during October. I love scary movies, and I had like a whole list of ones that I had never seen before, and I was like, I'm going to try to make it through this list. And I had a bunch of Korean horror movies on there because they're really well known for making good horror movies. And the only ones I didn't watch were the Korean ones, and I feel so bad, but the only reason I didn't do it is because I knew I would need to not do anything else while I watched it, because I'd have to be looking at the screen the whole time so I could read the subtitles.
Yeah.
And I almost always am doing something else when I watch something. Most of the time it's cross-stitching. I'm doing a lot of cross-stitching right now. Or I'm like playing on my Nintendo Switch. I play Stardew Valley, and they just like updated it for console, and so I've been playing Stardew Valley a lot. But either way, I'm like always doing something else. I kept being like, oh, I'll watch that one later when I feel like I can like actually sit and watch it and like look at the subtitles and not stare at something else. And I just can't. I don't know. I'm really like, scatter brained, I guess I would say, right now about that kind of thing. Like, I honestly feel like I don't know if I can sit down and watch something and not do something else at the same time. Whereas like when I go see something in the movies, you're just like forced to sit there and like watch and not do something else. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with that. I'm just like kind of rewatching a lot of stuff.
I think I'm also having a hard time. Part of the reason I'm having a hard time like getting really absorbed into something is because my attention span is all used up
Yeah.
on like foreign language TV shows. So I'm trying to learn a foreign language in the country where I live. And so I've been watching a lot of media in my third language. And
Mhm.
so it requires like 200% of my brain to follow what's going on. And I try not to look at the subtitles because I'm trying to, absorb the language. And it's so much work. Like I'm exhausted after watching 1 hour of television.
Yeah, that's fair. There's a lot of TV shows that I do want to watch right now. Like people keep talking about that Penguin TV show.
Yeah. It sounds like The Godfather, but it's the Penguin and it's Colin Farrell. And I don't know if I'm into that. I mean, it's supposed to be really good, but
Yeah. Like
yeah, I
it's
don't.
probably not something I would normally watch, but everyone keeps talking about how amazing it is. And I'm like, well, I do like Colin Farrell and I really like the other actor.
Who's the other actor?
I just can't remember her name off the top of my head, but she's been in other stuff and everyone
Mhm.
keeps talking about how amazing she is and how she's kind of like the secret star of the show. And so I'm really interested in it. Again, it's like one of those shows where I'm like, oh, I feel like I would need to actually pay attention and not just like listen to what
Yeah.
was going on. And so I just haven't had a chance to watch. But it is kind of the lead up to Oscar season right now, I would say.
Yeah.
All of those movies are starting to come out. So I've been spending a lot of time at the theater, which is one of my favorite things to do.
Hmm.
What I'm looking forward to is mostly movies that are going to be coming out over the next few months. There's a lot of them I'm really excited about.
I don't think I'm going to be able to watch like all the movies that are nominated, but let me know what the good ones are that I should watch.
I will. I will try, like every year I try to watch all of them and I almost never do, but I usually watch most of them. There's usually a few that I miss. Some of them are hard to get like access to. I can't find them anywhere online and they're not in theaters here. They're not available to rent or purchase or anything. And so, yeah, it's a bit of a struggle sometimes, but I will do my best.
Yeah, I have a ton of things that I want to check out, like when I'm able to put myself in the right frame of mind to
Mhm.
take on something new. Like I have been bookmarking so many different things and saving TikToks of book reviews and all of these things that I want to check
Mhm.
out. And at some point, I need to go through like these various lists that I've made and actually decide on a book or a show that I'm just going to sit down and consume.
You know what is really funny? I convinced my straight male friend to read the Captive Prince series.
Oh my God, how is that going? Is he
He
reading it?
he finished it.
Oh, like the trilogy.
Oh yeah, he read all 3 books in a very short period of time. I was over at his house one time and he was talking about how he's like, "Oh, all of a sudden I got like a real urge to read like high fantasy novels that have some like political intrigue and stuff like
Mhm.
that." And he was reading all of these. I'm not going to name drop anything, but maybe some people will be able to guess what series I'm talking about. He had been trying to read some straight books.
This have fairies in it. Please
I'm
no.
not going to say yes or no, but maybe. He was trying to read that series and then he had also started to read some other ones and he was like, I just don't like them very much. And I
Mhm.
was like, well, I don't read any straight books. He was like, yeah, I figured. And I was like, well, but I could like recommend you some that kind of fall into that category, but they're gonna be gay. And he was like, that's fine. And I was like, great. So I recommended Captive Prince trilogy and I recommended A Strange and Stubborn Endurance and I
Ooh.
recommended A Taste of Gold and Iron.
Oh, has he read them or he's just finished Captive Prince?
He read A Strange and Stubborn Endurance, which he said he really liked.
Uh-huh.
And then he read the Captive Prince trilogy, which
Mhm.
he had like a lot to say about. He said that he really enjoyed it, but he did have some quibbles, and I was like, that's fair. I told him, I was like, these aren't really like books that are politically motivated. There's politics involved in it, but I wouldn't say that's the main focus. And so some of the complaints that he had about those ones were kind of about like the politics about it. And I was like, man, these were not written for someone who's in it for the politics. And he's like, yeah, no, I realize that. But even those were just like the few small like issues that he had. But he did enjoy the series. And he was really impressed because I was like, oh, they really pull off maybe one of the most successful, like, true enemies to lovers I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can't really think of another series that has, like, a real enemies to lovers,
Yeah.
like, arc in the same way that Captive Prince does. Everything else is sort of like, oh, we sort of don't like each other because of a misunderstanding.
Unless like they genuinely want to kill each other, it's not
Yeah.
enemies to lovers.
Exactly. And that's the tea. And that's what most people get wrong, I think, with that trope, I would say. I know people call red, white, and royal blue enemies to lovers. And I'm like,
It is absolutely not.
We are not
They're
enemies.
like mild annoyances to lovers. And it's one-sided.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So anyway, he did enjoy that. And then I haven't really checked in on if he has started reading the other one, The Taste of Gold and Iron, or Iron and Gold. I can never remember which order that goes in.
Golden Iron, yeah.
Is it Gold and Iron? Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, haven't heard about that one, but he enjoyed the other ones quite a bit. So that's fun.
Oh, speaking of enemies to lovers, I have an enemies to lovers book that's on my TBR, and I've just moved it up to the top of the list because I got it for my niece for her birthday. And so I want to read it so that I can talk about it with her. But I think it's straight. I'm not sure.
Oh.
I hope it's not. I mean, I hope it's a little bit gay, but it's The Hurricane Wars by Thea Guanzon. I don't know if you've heard of it, but like it's like a fantasy novel inspired by Southeast Asian mythology. So I'm Southeast Asian, which is why this is exciting. The world building and the magic systems are supposed to be really good, and it features an enemies to lovers romance. But again, I'm always suspicious. Like, are they really?
Yeah.
But also, this author is from the Reylo fandom. I mean, like, she's a very successful published author now, but like, she comes from like fandom spaces. And Reylo is really not one of my ships. I don't know.
It's funny because I just read a book. I'm not going to name drop it because I don't want to be mean to the author. And especially because I know this is an author that a lot of people like. But I just read a book and I did enjoy it. Like, I thought it was good. But people always say that about books of like, oh, it like read like a fanfic. And I think that can be a good thing. Sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't think it was a very good thing in this case because that book, if it was a fanfic that was like 20K, I would have read it and really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But it was sort of stretched into, you know, a full length novel. I don't know how many pages that book was, maybe like 300 and some pages. And it was too much like a fanfic, and it was supposed to be set, not supposed to, it was set in a historical time period, but they used like really modern language. And it reminded me of like, I don't know, sometimes if you read a Merlin fanfic and it's clear that they just didn't really do any sort of, like they wanted to set it in the canon universe, but didn't want to do like even a tiny little bit of research into anything. And it was just like, I don't know, it was like really jarring in like a not good way. Like I think they were kind of trying to be like anachronistic and like a cutesy way of like
that worked sometimes. I mean, I've not seen it work in a book, but like some TV shows have done that really well.
Yeah.
But I think it requires a high level of skill. Like you can't be sloppy or lazy about it. Like it has to be very intentional.
It was a little sloppy and lazy and just kind of like, I don't know. I just, like I said, I think it can work.
Yeah.
I just think that it did not work in this book at all. And it was disappointing. Like I said, it was still like a cute book and I enjoyed parts of it. But for the most part, I was like, that was kind of a bummer because it was too much like a poorly written fanfic. And I was like I said, if I would have read like 20K of that for free on AO3, I would have been like, yeah, that was good. But a full-length novel. I don't know. It just wasn't really for me. Like a fanfic, but not in a great way.
Maybe we should ask our listeners to give us suggestions. Like, what have you been enjoying recently that we should check out to get us out of our media slump?
Yeah, that's a good idea. If anyone has
Yeah.
any things to recommend that we haven't already mentioned today that you think we should check out, or even any like ideas of stuff that we could talk about, that'd be great. We are kind of, I think, gonna slowly try coming back to recording
Yeah.
some episodes in the future, and so it'd be nice to have some ideas of stuff to talk about.
As usual, thanks for listening. Our website is bisexualbreakdown.com, where you can find links to all the places you can listen to the podcast, such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, YouTube, as well as links to all our social media. We are on Tumblr, Instagram, and TikTok, and we are Bisexual Breakdown across all of those platforms. You can leave us comments and feedback on any of those, or if you prefer, you can email us at bisexualbreakdown@gmail.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Bye for now. We are both bisexual. That's so true.